Hey folks, Joe with JAC Baseball Collector here, coming back at you with another divisional preview video for the 2023 season. As you can see by the backdrop here, we've got the American League Central tonight. I actually realized after filming my NL Central video that I forgot to put my backdrop of hats. I have quite the MLB hat collection. The NL Central is actually the lone division that I believe I have all 5 team hats. And, after shooting a 45-minute video, I said, well, I'm obviously not going back and redoing 45 minutes. So I just kind of let it roll. But, like I said, tonight we're going to get into the AL Central. Another quick, reminder of how we structure these videos. We're going to go through all 5 teams. We're going to hit the notable offseason moves. We're going to look at their studs and duds, so, team stars and potential bust candidates. We're going to take a look at the farm system, so a prospect to watch. And then we'll look at some bounce back, sleeper, breakout type candidates, and then do a quick over under to get things rounded out for each team. So let's dive right in. First up for the National League Central, we're going to have the last place team from last season is the Kansas City Royals. So this offseason, they made a few moves around the edges. I wouldn't say they did anything kind of too crazy. They brought in Aroldis Chapman to be their closer. They added Jordan Lyles, a so-so starting pitcher. They added Yarborough from the Tampa Bay Rays. They added the Franmil Reyes, and then they re-signed this guy right here, who started his career out in Kansas City, and then I think he also spent last year there, Zach Greinke. So definitely a very good kind of veteran presence for the team. He's going to be maybe similar to like Evan Longoria, who's out in Arizona right now. Andrew McCutchen, who's back in Pittsburgh. A nice veteran presence, mentor for some of the young guys coming up. As far as losses go, they got rid of Michael A. Taylor, who had, I think, a pretty decent season for them last year. They DFA'd Ryan O'Hearn, who was nothing special, but, just a guy that had 5 billion different autographs in 2019. Topps products, if you guys remember. And then Adalberto Mondesi is also gone. I believe he signed with the Red Sox. All right, looking ahead to some star power on this team, I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone that the guy I'm going to have to go with is Bobby Witt Jr., one of the biggest chases from 2022 sets, a fan favorite, a hobby favorite. As far as his actual production goes, he had a pretty decent but not amazing rookie season, I'd say. He had an on-base percentage under 300, which isn't so great. He did hit 20 homers and steal 30 bags, though, which is really solid. So it's, obviously it's not a great roster here when we're talking about the Kansas City Royals. So, he could certainly emerge as their number one star if he hasn't already. He's definitely got some work to do. He's got to work on the defense. He wasn't great as shortstop. He had a very negative defensive metrics last year. So he's got to be able to improve that to stick at the position, or he might end up at third or elsewhere. But he's where this team's star power is going to run through. If they have any kind of success whatsoever, it's going to be greatly attributed to this man, Bobby Witt Jr., who, like I said, is a big favorite in the hobby right now. As far as their bust candidate, I'm going to go with Aroldis Chapman. So here's a nice Bowman Platinum rookie card of his that I had actually in my Yankee collection, even though he was Yankee uniform on. He was a prominent Yankee for a number of years, so I do have this rookie in that collection. And he's had an incredible career as a closer. There's no way around it. But he's really collapsed in the past, year to 2 years. His velocity is falling. He used to throw 105 miles an hour. That's dipped down significantly, upwards of 10 miles an hour from that peak. His command is totally gone. He does not command his pitch as well. He throws a lot of balls. He's kind of wild. He doesn't obviously have the best attitude. He has kind of a weird attitude. That smile after he gave up the Altuve home run in the ALCS a couple of years ago, or the LDS a couple of years ago, whatever series that was. He had some domestic, issues. So, his career, I think, has basically run its course. Will he have the resume as a Hall of Fame closer? Maybe. But Kansas City is a strange fit for him, but it might be the right fit for him because he can kind of just go there and be forgotten about. He's certainly going to be the closer on this team, but I would say, not to expect much from him if you're, looking to, draft the guy or something in a fantasy league. Just don't expect too much. All right, let's go to Prospect Watch. The Royals have the 16th ranked farm system, so they're middle of the pack. You think it might be a little higher, considering how frequently they're picking at the top of the draft, but 16th isn't so terrible. Their top ranked prospect is this guy right here, Gavin Cross. So he's the 76th ranked prospect on average, and he's the only top 100 prospect for the Royals, at least in the MLB pipeline list. He was the ninth overall pick last year out of Virginia Tech, so a nice advanced college bat. He already has that kind of pedigree and that facing advanced pitching throughout college in front of him. And he absolutely raked in college. In the 2022 NCAA season, he raked and carried that right into rookie in A-ball. So he got drafted in 2022 after a strong college season, and then he already played at the rookie level and the A level both last year after being drafted and played really well. So he's a high average player, a high OBP player. He's got some power, but I would expect he's going to move through the system relatively quickly for the Royals. I've seen projections of 2025 ETAs for him to get to the majors. That feels awfully slow to me, kind of given this guy how advanced he already is and how quickly he appears to be moving through this system. So I expect him to be there maybe as early as next year. All right, we got a sleeper candidate here for the Royals this year. And for me, that's going to be Brady Singer. So, he was an afterthought as part of that 2021 rookie class. So that 2021, when I talk about the rookie class, I'm talking about kind of like the trading card, the hobby rookie class, which 2021 was not a particularly strong class, as we all know. But he was, he was kind of already down that list of those guys, and he was a bit of an afterthought, like I said. But he had a really nice breakout season in 2022. He had a 3.23 ERA over 27 games, and really his season was even better than that ERA makes it look like. He had a terrible April. He was pretty much out of the bullpen. He was getting hit hard. And then 4 out of the 5 months of the season, he actually had a sub-3 ERA. So 4 out of the remaining 5 months, he had a sub-3 ERA, which was really nice. So he was drafted out of Florida, so he's got a nice Division I college baseball pedigree. And I wouldn't be shocked if this guy emerges himself as the Royals ace. I don't know if he is already considered that, given his good season last year, but I don't think enough people are talking about this guy. So we got the nice finest autograph there of Brady Singer. And of course, the stands go down. We got the nice, like I said, finest autograph of Brady Singer. And he to me is going to be the ace of this Royals team. All right, over-under time as we get the cards down off of the showcase. So the Royals over-under number is 70 wins this year, or 70.5 wins. They won 65 last year, coming in last place in the division. I'm going to go over 70.5. I don't think that they're going to be good. But I think that they have the kind of makeup. They got the young sparks with guys like Bobby Witt, Brady Singer maybe taking that next step. I think that they've got enough here to, maybe get that team up to, 7, I don't know about 75 wins. Adding 10 wins is asking for a lot, but I think that they can eclipse 70. I feel pretty good about that. All right, moving on now to the Detroit Tigers. They were actually only 1 win better than the Royals, so 2, kind of perennial basement dwellers. But I think the Tigers have certainly have some upside, maybe not this year, but heading into the future. So let's take a closer look at them. In the offseason, they didn't make a ton of moves. They added Matt Boyd, I want to say Jared Lorenzen, Matt Lorenzen, Nick Matten, and Matt Vierling. So, okay players, nothing special. They got rid of Gregory Soto, who was a pretty solid relief pitcher for them last year. Actually very strong. Joe Jimenez, and then Jamar Candelario. So, marginal guys at best, really, other than Soto. He's probably the best one on that list. Looking at their stud of the Tigers, I'm going to go right out of the gate with Riley Green. I mean, this dude is for real. Absolute real deal. He was supposed to make the team out of camp last year at just 21 years old, but then he got hurt. I forget what injury he had, something with his legs maybe, but he got hurt, and he had to miss some time, and then he did come in, and he did pretty respectably, but he has a really solid speed power combination. And he could be an easy 25-25 guy, 25 homers, 25 steals, or even better than that, frankly, on a consistent basis. So I know that, they have some other cogs in the middle of this team, but I think that Riley Green is going to be, the guy for them for quite a long time. So, obviously there's not a ton of great options here on this roster, similar to the Royals. But I'm really happy to be able to highlight this young stud, and this is his actually first Bowman Refractor. Really nice card. I think I showed that card off when I did my 2023 Top Series 1 rookie preview. So he is a rookie this year, officially in the hobby, and I really think he's gonna blow the doors off. I think he has a really good chance to win the Rookie of the Year. between him and Gunnar Henderson. All right, I do have to just call out. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Miguel Cabrera and be able to show off this nice true blue to 150 from Topps Chrome. You know, don't have too much to say about him. We all know what this guy's all about. 3,000 hits, 500 homers. I mean, he's just the whole package, Hall of Fame career, one of the funnest guys of all time to root for, loves the game, and I think this is probably going to be his last season, if I'm not mistaken. It's either this year or next year. I think it's this year. So his last season with the Tigers, so just had to call him out and give him some love because one of the truly special careers we ever saw. Probably definitely one of the top 5 right-handed hitters I ever saw, up there with Pujols and A-Rod, and I'm sure I'm missing someone, but he's just, Trout. But he was a truly, truly special player. All right, bust candidate for the Tigers. I'm going to go here with Javi Baez. This nice top inceptions parallel here. I'm going with Javi Baez. He was basically from 2018 to 2021. This guy was a 6-WAR player. I mean, you could rely on him for 6-WAR, season in and season out. Between the offense, he played really solid defense, either playing second or short, depending on where he was. And then last year, that just collapsed. He cut that production in more than half. He got this big contract from Detroit. He was with Chicago. He got traded to the Mets. He went to the free agency. He got this big contract from Detroit, and he just completely regressed last year. The amazing thing about it is he actually managed to reduce his strikeout rate, which was always the knock on him, but everything else kind of went with it. His power went down, everything went away as he got rid of the strikeout rate. So maybe it's better for this guy to be overly aggressive. I don't know, but he just, he took a major step back. So, he used to be the freest swinger, like among the freest swingers that I think anyone's ever seen. He would swing at balls that bounced, 12 feet in front of the plate, like crazy. But I just I don't expect the discipline that he seemed to show last year to persist, obviously. So if he, reverts back into those kind of undisciplined, free swinging, aggressive ways, but the other stuff doesn't come back, the power stroke, all that's gone, especially in a stadium like the Tigers, which is hard to, hit for power to begin with. This guy all of a sudden becomes a very average, middle infielder who they gave a ton of money to. All right, time to look at the prospects. They have, sadly, the 30th ranked farm system in the major leagues, worst in the bigs. Again, very strange, obviously, considering how poor they've been for so many years with so many top picks, but obviously with the likes of Riley Green, Torkelson, some of these other guys having graduated, that probably bumped them down the rankings a little bit. The guy to highlight here is Jackson Jobe. We got the nice Genesis insert from Bowman Chrome, but Jackson Jobe, he's the 79th ranked prospect on average across the major publications. And I'm honestly surprised he's not a bit higher. This guy seems to be pretty highly regarded from everything I've seen. He was the number 3 overall pick last year. He was the second pitcher taken. I think Jack Leiter was the only one ahead of him, drafted 2nd overall. He misses a ton of bats. He strikes out a lot of guys. He's got a little ways to go. I mean, he's got some development time before he gets to the majors, that's for sure. But if he can continue to progress and get his way, Double A, Triple A, and then eventually into the majors, they could have a nice little rotation going. If he gets Casey Mize back from injury, you got Tariq Skubal, you have Matt Manning. So this has the makings of, even if all those guys click, especially, but even if just a few of them click, this has the makings of 2 to 3 years from now, a really solid looking rotation, honestly. So Jackson Jobe is definitely a prospect to keep your eyes on. Like I said, a little ways away still, but certainly very highly regarded. All right, I got a breakout candidate. I don't think this is going to surprise anyone. He had himself a rough start to his career last year, and that's going to be Spencer Torkelson. So I love Spencer Torkelson. I have he's a mini PC guy for me in the hobby. He, to me, is a stud. He had the rough go last year. He didn't really hit so much. I think they rushed him up to the majors a little bit, but he was drafted out of Arizona State. He was the number 1 overall pick just a few years ago. Probably could have used some more seasoning, another year or so down in the minor leagues. But he made the team out of camp last year just because the roster was so weak and so bad, and they needed somebody to play, and they said, let's give this kid a chance. So he definitely had a rough go of it. He has 604 OPS, which was pretty horrendous, but this is a guy who was a 30 home run hitter in just 120 minor league games the year before, right? So he has the power, he has the tools, he has the bat. So there's he makes a lot of contact, and he actually made a lot of contact last year. It's not like his problem was He was totally overmatched. He was whiffing. He was chasing pitches. He made a lot of contact. He didn't have like an insane K rate for a rookie. It just now needs to translate. So hopefully he took his lumps last year, and he finds a way for that to translate into kind of the number one overall pick pedigree that we were kind of hoping to see from this guy. So I have high hopes for him. If it's not this year, hopefully it's next year. But I do think that this year he's gonna surprise some people for sure. My bounce back candidate is this guy right here, Austin Meadows. He was traded over from the Rays last offseason to the Tigers, and 2022 was really just a lost season for him. He was injured pretty much the whole year. He hit 0 home runs, which is just like hard to fathom. He didn't play a full season, but he played enough where you would have thought he would at least pop a couple out. And it was just a very, very strange year for him because like all his batted ball rates were consistent with his career averages, and his strikeouts were down. He might not be that guy he was in, I think it was 2019. He hit like 290 with over 30 homers. He might not be that guy anymore. Like most of his career says, he's kind of a, mid-tier power guy maybe, with a decent average, gets himself on base. And last year he just did none of it. So I think that there's no real reason to believe if he's healthy that he's just going to be a total black hole in a lineup with no power to speak of whatsoever. So I think he could be in, that Detroit stadium again that's maybe tough to hit homers in. I think he has a good line drive swing, and he can turn himself into maybe like some sort of doubles machine for the Tigers. So I think he's a prime bounce back candidate for this year. All right, over-under time for the Tigers. Their over-under was 70.5 wins, just the same as the Royals. Like I said, they won 66 last year. I'm going to go with the under of 70.5 wins. I know I went over for the Royals, so it may be surprising that I'm saying under because I did, rave about a few of the guys on this roster, but I'm really concerned about their pitching, especially their bullpen. I didn't really talk too much about their pitching staff, but like Mize is out, Skubal's out. I can't even think off the top of my head who the guys they're actually running out there are. I'm sure there's a few of them. I guess like the guys like Matt Boyd and Lorenzen and them that I mentioned from their offseason additions. The offense could definitely take the next step, but the pitching is just so bad. It's so bad that I can't even remember who half of the guys are, as you can tell here. So, I think that they're going to be under. I think they're going to struggle again this year, but if they can, continue graduating good prospects, which hopefully they can with the 30th ranked system, but if they can continue graduating good prospects and, sign a couple free agents here or there or make an interesting trade, if this offense is able to blossom, that it could be 2024, 2025 they could find themselves in a little bit of contention. All right, next we've got, where do we got? Here it is. Next we've got the Minnesota Twins. So the middleman in the AL Central this year and last year. In the offseason, they made a handful of pretty solid moves. So they got Joey Gallo, who's hoping to resurrect himself and have a big bounce back. Christian Vasquez, who's a pretty solid little catcher. Pablo Lopez, who they traded for this guy right here, Luis Arias, who was a big loss for them. So this guy, he actually won the batting title last year in the American League, beating out Aaron Judge and denying Aaron Judge his Triple Crown. But they added this guy, Pablo Lopez, who's going to slot in probably as their number 1 or number 2 starter. Lopez had a really nice first half of the season last year. It was pretty solid. I don't know how much of it was smoke and mirrors. I think he had a pretty rough go of it, either through the middle of the year or towards the end of the year. I think his ERA really inflated. He had a bunch of bad starts, but he is definitely a solid young pitcher. So he's going to slot in as like a 1, 2, or 3. They have 3 nice guys at the top of the rotation with him, Sonny Gray, Joe Ryan. So that combination will be 1, 2, and 3 in some order. As far as other guys, they took Michael A. Taylor, who we already talked about, left the Royals, and then big re-sign of Correa. So after that whole crazy offseason with him, with the Giants missing out on him, and the Mets missing out on him, he eventually went back to the Twins. And then on the loss side, we already talked about Arias. Gio Urshela is gone. Gary Sanchez is gone. So both of the guys they got in that Yankee trade last year for Donaldson and IKF. Miguel Sano is gone. And then Michael Fulmer also is gone. So the Twins stud, their star, I was thinking about giving this to Byron Buxton, but the guy just simply can't stay on the field. But when he is on the field, he is a very special player. But it's got to be Carlos Correa. So we got this really cool looking, I don't know what this one's called, like a gold Vector or gold shimmer from Donruss of Carlos Correa here back when he was with Houston. But it was good to see that the Twins got their man after this crazy weird offseason with Correa with all his injury questions and failed medicals and all that. But It definitely shores up their roster rather. But it's worth noting, like for Correa's sake himself, is that he took 6 years, 200 from the Twins, which is nothing to scoff at. I mean, the guy got 200 million, but the deal that was on the table from the Mets was 12 years, 315. So it was a huge step down. So those medicals that everyone was concerned about obviously made quite a difference. And so obviously the question is going to be like, can this guy stay healthy? Whatever like everyone was seeing, whatever these doctors were seeing that were making all these deals fall through, like is that going to be like a lingering problem for him? Is it going to be a problem for him this year? Is it going to be a problem for him in the future throughout this 6 year deal? We don't really know, but until we see otherwise, there's no reason to believe this guy won't be like the leader of the Twins and the absolute best player every time he steps on the field for this team. All right, dud, bust candidate. I'm going to go with Sonny Gray. So I got his first Bowman paper here back when he was with Oakland. Maybe this is just like Yankee bitterness. And I'm sorry, I just dropped something on the ground that I'm going to need for the rest of this video. So I'll snag that. Back to business. But Sonny Gray, like I said, maybe this is just Yankee bitterness because he was just like so bad. And every time I saw this guy start when he was with the Yankees for that short stretch was just like atrocious. And he couldn't throw strikes. And he just like he was overwhelmed in New York. But like to me, he just like doesn't pitch enough innings to be an ace, which is basically what they've looked at him to be. He just doesn't get deep enough into games. He nibbles, around the plate, and it drives his pitch counts up, and he tends to miss starts and other things. So, he had good numbers last year from ERA, ERA wise, but there were some things that definitely flashed red to me a little bit. His hard hit rate was up. So you guys hear me talk about that a lot with these guys, whether it be a batter whose hard hit rate is up or down. Or a pitcher with the same. So he's given up more hard contact than he ever has. His ground ball rate is down, which may be good actually now with the shift being eliminated, quite frankly, but it is down, and ground balls are what you generally want to induce. His strikeout rate was down. His BABIP was down, so that's batting average on balls in play, which sometimes, signals good luck or bad luck if it's not in line with your career averages. So all these things to me say like regression is coming. So he seems to have been like, kind of teetering and, finding ways to pitch pretty well for both the Reds and the Twins. But I think that he's a prime regression candidate and he should not be relied upon to be an ace for any team. All right, prospect to watch. They have the 19th ranked farm system. Is that right? Yeah, the 19th ranked farm system. And the guy that I'm going to call out, he actually had rookie cards last year. So he was considered a rookie last year. He's been in the system forever. But he is technically still a prospect. And if he could ever get himself on the field full time, he could be super special. So I have to call him out, and it's Royce Lewis. So you see here, he's got a rookie card in pretty much every set last year. Most of the sets, honestly. I think he was in Topps Update. He was here in Heritage. I mean, he already is considered a rookie, at least as far as the hobby is concerned. But he barely has played at the major league level. Like, I think certainly less than 100 games, maybe only a few dozen, to be perfectly honest with you. But he still is qualified as a prospect. He's the 15th ranked prospect on average going into this season. But he was a former top 10 prospect just a couple years ago. I mean, so this guy was extremely highly regarded. He tore his ACL before, I don't think it was before last season, I think it was before 2021. It set him back quite a bit, but like, he already missed the 2020 season because with the COVID season, and then he tore the ACL, so he missed like basically 2 seasons of baseball. But he's got just such talent. I mean, obviously he's blocked at shortstop now by Correa, so like where does he actually fit into the equation? But he's incredibly impressive, incredibly talented. He's obviously going to graduate immediately from the prospect ranks, but I had to call this guy out because he technically qualifies as a prospect, and I just think he's going to be an incredible talent, whether it's with the Twins or somewhere else. So he's just got to stay healthy. And we'll see if he can regain that top 10 prospect form. I do also just have to call out, and just because this is a very, very nice looking card, Austin Martin. So he was traded to the Twins, obviously, as part of the Jose Barrios deal a couple years ago. And he is out for the season this year, but he's another prospect who's trying to get his career back on track. It just goes to show you how tough prospecting is. This guy was the chase in 2021 Bowman. He was the one everyone wanted. His cards were going for a fortune. His autos were going for a fortune. It just shows you how fickle baseball could be, especially with these young players and these prospects, and how tough prospecting really is. All right, I've got a bounce back candidate. Maybe you would consider him. Actually, I would consider him more of a breakout candidate when you take a look at it. And that's going to be Alex Kirilloff. So we got this nice, sharp looking card from Archives. It's out of 150. Nice Archives rookie of Alex Kirilloff. So he was another guy from that kind of like weird 2021 class where no one's really emerged as a particularly strong player yet. But he's known for having a big bat. I mean, he hasn't lived up to it at the major league level. There's a lot of hype around his bat when he was first coming up. Hasn't lived up to it yet. But that's mainly been due to injuries. It hasn't so much been performance. It's mainly been injuries that have kept him off the field and kind of sapped him a little bit. But this year, he should be the full-time first baseman from everything that I've seen. So he's going to get a full season under his belt. He's going to be given all the chances on this team to succeed, as far as I could tell. And he's certainly a guy who could bop 25 home runs. There's no reason whatsoever that he can't hit for 20, 25, even 30 home run power. So I think that he's my prime breakout guy. It's frankly it's that simple. He hits, again, I'm going to talk about hard hit rate. He hits the ball incredibly hard. He barrels up, like, I forget what the percentage was, 10.2% of barrels or something, which is just is incredibly high. So he's got the tools to do it. He's got the ability to hit. And I think this is finally the year that he puts it all together if he can keep himself on the field for a full season. All right, over-under time. Minnesota Twins. Their over-under is 83.5 wins, which feels awfully high to me. I'm going to have to go under 83.5. They only won 78 last year, which I think a lot of folks thought that they underachieved a little bit, especially after the Correa signing. But they still just feel like a 500 team to me. So obviously, 83.5, if you're 84 and... what would that be, 84 and 78, you're basically a 500 team, but I think that they're going to kind of be firmly 500. So, I'm getting them around 81 wins, 81 wins. So I'm going under 83.5 for them this year, even if some of these key players like Kirilloff, Buxton's healthy, Joe Ryan takes the next step. I think that they're still going to be in that 81 win range. All right, next up, definitely a disappointing team last year, but looking to have themselves a better season this year. It's the Chicago White Sox. So they had a somewhat quiet offseason. They didn't make a ton of moves, but the moves they did make were notable. They brought in Andrew Benintendi. They brought in Mike Clevenger, who has got himself into some trouble with, I think, some like domestic violence or something in the offseason here. But I do believe that there's not going to be any disciplinary. I think they basically dismissed whatever it was. They did lose, however, the model of consistency, Jose Abreu, and how awesome was this insert set in Bowman's Best last year? Just such a sharp look. I have a number of these. I think I have a Jazz Chisholm, a number of these. They were just so nice looking. But they did lose Jose Abreu, who, even though he lost some of his power last year, I think he only hit 16 homers, which is the model of consistency. The guy would hit like upwards of 300 every year. He was just a super reliable hitter, driving in runs. So he is going to be someone that they probably miss in the middle of that lineup, even with the addition of someone like Benintendi. They also lost Johnny Cueto and AJ Pollock, who was with the team for a little while. Let's go into stud and dud for the Chicago White Sox. For stud, this one I think is going to surprise some people, but I'm going to go with Eloy Jimenez. So we got another nice chrome, number 99, a green number to 99 Topps Chrome. Really, really nice looking card there. I was originally planning to go with Dylan Cease here, and he's probably the safer pick. I mean, he has such a dominant season. He really solidified himself as an ace, but I think that he might have to do it for more than one season for me. Pitchers are just so fickle. But I think Eli's kind of like the forgotten man. I mean, he's kind of fallen out of that big four from the 2019 rookie class. It was Tatis, Vladdy, Alonso, and Eloy. It was always those big four together. And now he's kind of playing second fiddle to those guys. He's fallen out of the highly regarded guys, and it's mainly his own fault. I mean, he can't stay on the field, but when he is, he could hit, man. He's damn good. He's only 26, and I think he could be one of the best players on this team, if not one of the best players, one of the best hitters in the American League, if he could just stay damn healthy. I think he only played like 99 games last year, but when he was on the field, like I said, he just flat out hits. Second half of last year, he missed time early. Second half of last year, when he did get himself back healthy, he hit 323 with a 948 OPS, which was good for a 167 OPS plus. I mean, extrapolate that out over a full year, and that's an MVP season. Flat out, that's an MVP caliber offensive season. Maybe he doesn't win the MVP, because he's not a great defender. He's primarily going to be a DH, but those are MVP type offensive numbers. So it might be asking for a lot and putting it on this guy's shoulders to say he's the star, he's the stud, he's the number one guy on this team. But I think that he has the ability to be, and it's all about health. So this one might be a little bit more of a hot take rather than some of the others that you've seen me make as far as the stud goes, which have been kind of safer picks, more obvious picks. But I really like Eloy, and I think that he can get himself back into that echelon of of that big four from the 2019 rookie class. All right, Dud. This one might not come as a big surprise to people who know me and have heard my opinions on this guy before, but it's going to be Andrew Benintendi. Their big signing from this offseason. They gave him a pretty sizable, nice contract. He wasn't interested in coming back to the Yankees that a lot of Yankee fans were clamoring for. I was not one of them. I was happy they didn't bring him back. I've been kind of a long-time Benintendi hater. Even when they got him, I wasn't happy that they made that trade. I guess they didn't give up too much for him, so I couldn't really complain that much, but I just didn't think he was the answer. Last year, he hit 320 with a 124 OPS plus before the trade to the Yankees. So that was basically, call it the first half of last year, a little bit more than the first half of the season. But if you look at his entire body of work, which was about 1,300 plate appearances dating back to the start of 2019, he's been a league average hitter outside of that half season. So he's hit something like 260 with like a 99 OPS plus in the other 1,300 plate appearances over the past 4 seasons. To me, that just isn't. It just isn't a recipe for success. He basically got paid to be that 320 hitter. He got a contract to be that 320 guy, to be that guy from the first half of last year. He is a solid contact guy. He does play good defense, but to me, if he's going to be more like that guy that he was for those other 1,300 plate appearances, hitting 260 and with like no power to speak of, maybe missing some games with injuries and other things, which he did last year for the Yankees, which he did in some of those other seasons. I'm just not buying it. I don't think he's going to be that guy. I don't think he's a guy that they can rely on. If they're looking to him to be like a 1 or 2 hitter in that order, I think the White Sox are going to be disappointed. All right, prospect watch. White Sox farm system is ranked 28th. So the total opposite of what we saw with the NL Central last year. The NL Central yesterday. The AL Central has a lot of looks like a lot of organizations who have fairly weak farm systems, whereas in the NL Central we saw a bunch of ones that had top 5 farm systems or top 10 farm systems. But the number one guy to watch for the White Sox, even if they have a weak system overall, they do have a very nice prospect at the top of their ranks in Colson Montgomery. So he's the 36th ranked prospect on average across the major publications. And he was a stellar 2-sport athlete coming out of high school before he was drafted. So he was a baseball player, obviously carried his high school baseball team to a state championship, I believe, in Indiana. He was also a really nice basketball player. He's 6'4", really nice, talented basketball player. And he's received comparisons to Corey Seager was one of the things that I read. So he's a big, tall, left-handed hitting shortstop who's got some pop in his bat. Makes people think a lot of Corey Seager, and you can kind of see in this picture, like in his follow through, what it looks like his swing is like, just feels and looks kind of Seager-like, to be perfectly honest with you. He does have limited speed, which you don't see often with shortstops, but he's definitely more of a power guy. He's got pop in that bat, like I said. He's more of in the Seager mold, a guy who could hit like 35 homers in a season. He's already made his way to Double-A, which is pretty fast. I mean, he was drafted out of high school in 21. He's only 20 years old, so it was his 20-year-old season last year. He'll be 21 this year. He already, he had very minimal time in Double-A. I mean, only a handful of games, but he already made his Double-A debut, which is pretty nice. But obviously he's blocked if he's staying at shortstop, which he might not stick at the position if they don't think he's fleet of foot enough. But he is currently blocked by Tim Anderson if he was to stay at the position. So they obviously don't need to rush him. They can let him continue to develop, let him build that bat out, let him learn the shortstop position a little bit better. So this is, he's a very, very talented prospect, somebody definitely to keep an eye on. All right, we've got a bounce back candidate and a breakout candidate, 2 for the White Sox here. Bounce back candidate is none other than Luis Roberts. So this guy right here could easily be flip-flopped places with Eloy Jimenez, right? He's just as talented. He puts up just as good of numbers. His problem is that he just cannot stay on the field. Right, so it's either of those guys. If they played a full season, they could be the most feared 3-4 combination in Major League Baseball, without a doubt. So he's certainly more talented. I think he's more talented probably overall than Eloy because he has the defense. He plays really strong outfield defense, but he can't stay healthy. He hasn't managed to play 100+ games in a season yet. So he was all the rage in 2020. He was but he's all his stuff in the hobby is coming down, down, down because he can't stay on the field. He hasn't proven that he can do it. I mean, all the talent in the world doesn't mean anything if you're not on the field. So when he does play, though, he's a little up and down, but I would say it's mostly up. I mean, he's really good when he plays. His numbers are really good when he plays. Like when he was healthy in 2021, he was a stud. I mean, he hit 338. He had power speed defense combination. So I'm not exactly sure how to put into words what to expect from this guy, but I think that he could certainly be a bounce back if he just stays healthy. He could hit 300, he could hit 30 homers, he could steal 30 bags. I mean, what more do you want? He's just got to find a way to stay healthy and make himself relevant again in the game of baseball and in the hobby. All right, breakout candidate is going to be Andrew Vaughn, another one of my mini PC guys. I really like Andrew Vaughn. I've picked up a bunch of his stuff over the past few years since he was part of that 2021 rookie class. This is a nice Bowman Sterling auto. I can't even remember where I got this. I might have been buying something else on eBay, and the guy happened to be selling this, and I just picked it up as part of like a combined shipping situation. But he made really nice progress last year from 2021 to 2022. He plays a bit of left field, a bit of first base. He DHs a little bit. But this year, with Abreu gone, he should probably be the first full-time first baseman. So similar to Kirilloff, I think he's going to get full-time reps and stability at a single position. And he's another guy. He hits the ball extremely hard off his bat. He improved his strikeout rate last year. His slugging percentage went up. There's a lot of signs just pointing to a potential breakout for this guy. He was the former number 3 overall pick. He was a former top 20 prospect, so he's got the pedigree. And all the signs are pointing, all the arrows are pointing in the right direction with this guy as far as I could see. So I could see him really solidifying the number 5 spot in this batting order. He's probably going to start a little bit lower in the order, but you figure if you bat like Robert 3rd, Eloy 4th, and then Vaughn 5th, that's a very nice looking middle of the order if all those guys are healthy. And I could see him, slugging 25 homers, driving in potentially 100 runs if he has all those, solid, healthy players ahead of him in the batting order. So Andrew Vaughn is definitely a guy to keep an eye on. All right, over-under for the White Sox. I actually like this team quite a bit. Their over-under is 84.5 wins, so just a little bit better than the Twins. They certainly underachieved last year, going just 500 with only 81 wins. They were a very popular World Series pick going into last year. A lot of people really liked what they did. They underachieved like crazy. Like I said, they did get rid of Tony La Russa. That was definitely something that was holding them back. So getting rid of Tony La Russa should help them this year. Didn't really talk a lot about their pitching staff here, but I do like their pitching quite a bit. They have Dylan Cease, Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, Michael Kopech. They got Clevenger, obviously, if he could stick around there. But their team's all going to depend on health. Eloy's got to be healthy. Luis Roberts got to be healthy. Benintendi can't be a total dud. These pitchers got to be healthy, right? It's a Giolito sometimes has injury problems. Kopech sometimes injury problems. Clevenger sometimes has injury problems. They don't have Liam Henderson because he's dealing with cancer, so obviously all the best to him. But if they could put it together and have a somewhat healthy season, to me, this team is the team to beat in the American League Central. I like them quite a bit. I'm going to go over 84.5 for sure. Potentially well over 84.5. All right, let's round it out now with the winners of the AL Central last year, the Cleveland Guardians. I always still want to call them the Cleveland Indians after all this time, but the Cleveland Guardians, and you see offensive Chief Wahoo back here, but that is the only Cleveland hat that I had. Off-season moves, they made a couple moves around the edges, nothing big. I guess one big one was Josh Bell, who I was watching a game, spring training game, I think, them versus maybe Boston or something. He was looking a little chubby. He's always been a big guy. You can kind of tell he's always been a big guy, but he was looking a little chubby for me. So a little concerned about that if he's a little bit out of shape, but still expect him to be a productive guy in the middle of that order. They also had a Mike Zunino, who's been a veteran kind of journeyman catcher in the league. They traded away Nolan Jones, who was a decent prospect for them. They got rid of, I wrote Owen Wilson, and that's wrong. It's Owen Miller. And Austin Hedges, another kind of like middling catcher. So not a super busy offseason for the Guardians. So looking ahead, though, to stud and dud, the stud is going to come as no surprise to anyone. It's Jose Ramirez. So this is a Jose Ramirez gold out of 2022 from last year. He's probably one of my least favorite big stars in the game. I used to have this really irrational hatred for Adrian Beltre. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I just hate third baseman or something. But I used to have this really irrational hatred for Adrian Beltre, even though he had like just tremendous numbers. He played this incredible defense. I seem to have the same feeling about Jose Ramirez. I just like don't particularly like him. I just like don't get how he's good. But somehow year in and year out, this guy's absolutely insane. He's absolutely insane. He hits for a 900 OPS every year since 2017. Like a year in and year out, you could guarantee it. He's 6+ WAR every single year. He's 30 home runs every single year. He's 20 steals every single year. He's led the league in doubles a couple times during that period, so on and so on and so on. I mean, he plays good defense. He runs the bases well, and he's smart. Like, there's little you could say about this guy that isn't positive. Just for whatever reason, he's just not one of my favorites. Like, no particular reason. But he's an absolute stud. He's a top 5 fantasy pick every year. I mean, you can't go wrong with Jose Ramirez, and he probably would get a lot more love, both in the hobby and in general, if he wasn't playing on this kind of like in a lowly city like Cleveland. Not to knock Cleveland, but they're just not a big market city that guys get the big love and the big adoration from. All right, our bust candidate or regression candidate, I'm going to go with Oscar Gonzalez. So he had a pretty nice debut last year. I think he played like around maybe upwards of 100 games, if I'm not mistaken. But it just feels like he's being pumped up quite a bit. He was part of this 2023 Topps Series 1 rookie class. And it seems like he's really being pumped up by a lot of people. Maybe it's just some of the people that I interact with. But he takes no walks. He just like he swings at everything. He takes absolutely no walks. He was pretty crummy in the Winter League. I think he played the Dominican Winter League. Small sample, but he was crummy. He's having a rough spring training, small sample, but he's not been good. I think guys like this who just don't have a ton of discipline. He was a little bit of an older rookie. He obviously has a lot of power. He had this big power surge in 2021, which he never really hit for that kind of power in the minors before that, at the lower levels. But just something jumps out at me is like, I don't know if he's going to be able to consistently reproduce it, especially with the lack of walks and discipline. Guys are going to figure him out. They're going to find that hole in his hot zones, and he's just going to have a hard time. I think if he's got to rely solely on power, I think he's going to have a little bit of a hard time going forward as guys kind of figure him out. And the low on base percentage is just going to kill him. All right, prospect to watch. This is actually one of the good farm systems in the AL Central. They have the number 2 ranked farm system, the Guardians. And the prospect to watch for me is Daniel Espino. So this guy he was out last year with a shoulder injury. It turns out shortly before I made this video that I just read, and this probably was older news, but I just read that he's out for another maybe 8 weeks or so with the shoulder. The shoulder problems are just lingering on him. But he is the 20th ranked prospect on average. He has a devastating high-powered fastball. Like this thing tops out at 103 miles an hour. He consistently sits at like 97 or something like that. We're talking a guy who struck out 152 batters in 92 innings in 2021. Obviously, 2022 is derailed by the injuries, like I said, but and they're lingering into this year. But this is a guy who he could be truly special. I think they were worried about him potentially having to become a reliever, and maybe he will if these injuries persist, but he's showing that if and when he's healthy, he could be a top of the line starting pitcher who just blows batters away. So the key for him is going to be getting healthy. Probably won't see him much in the 2022-23 season, to be perfectly honest with you. But he seems like he's a guy who could certainly be ready in 2024 if he can get himself healthy. All right, sleeper candidate. It's going to be Tristan McKenzie. So this is a pretty cool looking parallel here, number to 149 out of Donruss Optic of Tristan McKenzie. Nice little rated rookie action. He already had his breakout season. He had a really nice season last year. He got up to 191 innings, sub-3 ERA. But he's just another guy who I just feel like is flying under the radar. I've mentioned that a lot in these videos. There just seems to be these guys, especially pitchers, who have these breakouts and just like don't really hear people talking about them a whole lot. And maybe it's because they're in smaller markets or whatever it is, but he's really been refining his game, refining his stuff, refining his pitch mix. He's definitely a worker. He's a workhorse. And I think he makes for a really good 1A to Shane Bieber's 1. And Shane Bieber is like the ultimate consistent guy. I was looking at his numbers year in and year out. He has like basically the same numbers every single season. Obviously a little bit worried about the big innings jumps between seasons. I've mentioned that a couple times before. But he's a guy who I think can absorb it a little bit. He probably needs to eat a cheeseburger, as our friend Coach likes to say. He is so rail thin. But I think he's another guy who's flying under the radar despite having kind of a star caliber season last year. All right, one more bounce back, and then we'll get you guys out of here. I know this one has ran long once again, but these are certainly long form videos. It's Aaron Savali is a bounce back guy for me. So he had a pretty strange 21 and 22 campaigns. He was a rookie in 2020. In 2021, he had an ERA that outpaced his FIP. So that's the fielder independent pitching, which takes into account walks and homers and Ks and tries to eliminate, what your defense did as far as a metric goes. His ERA was better than his FIP by a run. But then in 2022, his ERA went way up, but his FIP went way down. His ERA was a run worse than his FIP. So it's a very weird dynamic. I expect that he's going to settle somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't think he's going to be a big breakout star or anything, but I think he could settle somewhere in the middle of those two places where he was kind of like high 4s ERA and high 3s ERA. If he can get himself into kind of like the low to mid 4s ERA, he's at least going to settle himself in as like a middle of the rotation starter, which I think the Guardians could definitely use to help solidify that rotation a little bit. So, he needs to make some more starts too. He hasn't pitched, I think, more than 21 games in a season. So if he can make himself 25 or even upwards of 30 starts, if he can stay healthy and settle in at like a 4.2 ERA, can't really complain about that from a 3 or 4 starter, to be perfectly honest. All right, over under 87.5 wins. They won 92 games last year. I'm actually going to go under 87.5. Like I said, I do like the White Sox this year to be the favorites and to win this division. I do think that they overachieved a little bit to get to that 92 wins. To get there, they actually had to go 24-10 through September and a couple games into October to get to that 92. So they went on an absolute tear and a hot streak to end the season. They also had a stretch in June where they won 16 out of 20. So, obviously teams get hot. They do things like that. I think that's just too volatile and not sustainable to have to go on these really long, extended winning streaks with just, a couple of minor losses here and there. So I don't love the Guardians this year. They probably still will contend. It'll be a battle with the White Sox, similar like we talked about in the NL Central between the Brewers and the Cards. But for me, the White Sox are the team to beat. I think the Guardians take a step back and the White Sox take a step forward. All right, longest one of these yet, so I appreciate anyone who stuck around all the way to the end. Definitely having a lot of fun doing these, even though they are quite long. We'll be back next week with, I believe, a rookie card explosion box I'm going to have, so getting back to opening up some cards. We'll do the East divisions to close out the week, and then heading into the week going into the season, we'll have just some more fun stuff coming up on the channel. So if you haven't already, make sure you get in on my 250 subscriber giveaway. It is the video. I will link it in the description, but it is up on my channel. I'm going to run that through tomorrow. Any comments after tomorrow will be not part of the random. And then Sunday we'll run the random to select the winner to win a 2023 Top Series 1 hobby box. So very nice, fun giveaway going on there. I've gotten a lot of engagement on that. So really thrilled. I'm glad you guys are enjoying that. But otherwise, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments what you think about the AL Central so far this year. Hope you're enjoying this type of content. And I'll be back next week, probably on Monday, with a rookie card explosion box. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. The best is yet to come. Take care.